they are explaining this federal law that they are using as the basis to arrest Don Lemon and Georgia Fort. And for the purpose of the conversation, I'm purposely separating Lemon and Fort from the two other individuals who were arrested today. Let's talk about from a journalistic perspective. What are they trying to assert here?
So the government is trying to assert that Don Lemon actually conspired to violate the civil rights of those people who were in the church. Now, this actually comes from a law called the FACE Act. It came about in 1994. It really had to do with reproductive rights when it was being looked at before it was passed. The only way for legislators to actually get it passed was to add people who were, congregating and wanting to go to church. And that's the only way that they got the abortion part of it. Okay. So that people could go peacefully in order to get an abortion. And so with that in mind, it's just a very weird conflagration of how this law is even used and against a journalist who's been doing something. Listen, the First Amendment is so important in terms of freedom of press that they made it the First Amendment. That is how important it is. There are laws on the books for journalists that are not afforded to anybody else. I mean, from copyright laws to not giving up their sources. But here's what we know and what's going on in this urban warfare. These laws don't matter anymore. And that's the takeaway from everything that's going on today and everything that's been going on since Donald Trump came into presidency. The laws that are on the books are being chipped away little by little things like this. Let's go ahead and set a precedent and arrest Don Lemon. At the end of the day, anybody who is in the reach of, let's say, ICE agents, for example, yes, you have rights if you are on American soil. It doesn't matter. You're supposed to get a judicial warrant. It doesn't matter. Now we know the administrative warrant is good enough, and those warrants are signed by ICE agents to go into your house. At this point, like Don Lemon and anybody else that was arrested, it now becomes a process of what is the evidence. Now, some of the evidence that they are saying in this 12-page indictment looks like this. They are saying that he ignored requests to leave the church. They're saying that he met with others and there was a conspiracy. He said that this particular indictment said that in addressing other people that he allegedly met with and conspired with, he used the term we because he was a part of that process. And then they also said that he took steps to maintain some type of operational secrecy. So you got to start looking at the evidence when the evidence we know does not hold. It's BS. This we know. The part of the process that I think that we all should be looking at is the fact that they are taking him through this. I think that is the part that they want to put him through. They know once it gets to court, it's not going to hold up. I mean, it's going to be terrible precedent. You're not going to have any journalist being able to cover anything. This is why 5 judges already said no, that there was no probable cause. So here we are now. Now it's going to be all about the evidence. And I think that whether you are arrested by ICE or whether you are arrested because you are a journalist or even just someone who's a protester, you better be recording. You better get your evidence ready because it probably won't hold up. But they just want to take you through this process right here for embarrassment, just like they did Comey, just like they did James, right? We know that this is a part of the process to just stick it to you and put you in the news the way that they are doing right now. And I think that that's the biggest takeaway from everything that we are seeing. But ultimately, it's conspiracy to deprive civil rights acts, civil rights, very laughable.
Matt, New York Times wrote this here. The federal magistrate judge who reviewed the evidence approved charges against only 3 of the people, Levy Armstrong, Chantel Allen, and Nikema Levy Armstrong, Chantel Allen, and William Kelly. He refused to sign arrest warrants for Mr. Lemon and the others, citing insufficient evidence. The Justice Department then petitioned a federal chief judge in the federal district court in Minneapolis to issue the additional warrants, only to be denied. And what they then did was they kept going and kept going. And as I said, MS Now reported that there were career prosecutors in Minneapolis and Los Angeles who saw their evidence and said, this ain't it. Matt?
I'm sorry, Roland. It's crazy because I'm sitting in Minneapolis as we speak. I'm in my hotel room. I've been all day with other civil rights lawyers from around the country, working on some pretty important and timely things. And I'll tell you a couple things. The first thing is, I mean, as I was walking from my hotel to where that meeting was, I saw signs in windows where the prevailing sentiment is F ICE, get ICE out. So this city is really embroiled, obviously, in what we know is going on, and the tensions are high. And I heard that same terminology today in the meeting I was in. But to answer your question, or rather to speak to your observation, I want to first say everything Candace said was right, which is always the case. But in addition to that, this is a way overreach. I read the indictment. This is at best state criminal trespass charges. So this is about the cruelty being the point. The cruelty is the point. The process is the point. Parading you out as, a person who's allegedly violated the law is the point. And I think Candace is 10,000% right. I think when this gets in front of 12 citizens in this federal district, they're not going to see it there. Now, I will tell you, it is concerning to some extent that it looks like they're trying to be very hyper technical in the indictment in terms of the acts that they're saying were overt acts with a conspiracy, and the congregants were allegedly afraid to leave and all that stuff. But what's important about that is a jury of 12 people is going to determine whether they had a reasonable fear, whether they really felt threatened, whether they really felt intimidated. People coming in and making noise and maybe disrupting a church service is not tantamount to intimidating you or threatening you or scaring you or any of those things. A couple other very quick things that I think we haven't really discussed. But first, it's very possible for a journalist to be there and have their constitutional rights both as a journalist and as a citizen, right? So in looking at this indictment, there's allegedly there was allegedly a command from the pastor that people needed to leave. People didn't leave, allegedly, right? So that's important because at best you're looking at criminal trespass under those charges. But until that happens, until someone, at least with the way it works in Texas, until someone is commanded to leave and refrains from doing so, if they're allowed to be there, then it is not per se a criminal trespass. I know this is not a criminal trespass charge, but my point is, at best, you got a state low-level criminal charge if you have anything at all. But what I also think is very interesting from the indictment is it seems like the government must have tried to flip somebody already, because the first part of the indictment talks about all these conversations that allegedly constitute the overt acts where they were planning the conspiracy. But what I was thinking as I was reading that is the only way the government could potentially know that is if someone told them about what allegedly happened as the plan before they went to the church. And that, I think, is a very intriguing thing, just kind of academically, but it's also very concerning because I suspect somebody was leaned on pretty heavily by the federal agents to get that version of events that they then went to the grand jury with. So I think this is a great overreach. I think Candace is correct completely. And I think at best, this is state criminal charges. And if you look at them in the context of journalists, there's no question the First Amendment is sacrosanct. But even if you look at them as citizens, going into a church and, maybe disrupting a service is not the same as trying to divest people of their civil rights to religiously worship or to worship. And I think this is just a gross misapplication of the law. I think it's going to blow up in their faces when 12 people are in the box looking at the evidence.
This is what it was called Operation Pull Up, Cooney. And then this is what the indictment says. All defendants met at a shopping center for a pre-op briefing during which Armstrong and Allen advised other co-conspirators, including defendants Kit Kelly, Lemon, and then they got a couple of the names that are wiped out, Lundy, Cruz, Fort, about the target of their operation, and provided instruction on how the operation would be conducted once they arrived at the church. Once at the church, all of the defendants entered the church to conduct a takeover-style attack and engage in various acts in furtherance of the conspiracy. In furtherance of the conspiracy and to accomplish the object thereof, defendants Armstrong, Allen, Kelly, Lemon, two names were been blacked out, Lundy, Cruz, Fort, and together with other persons known and unknown to the grand jury, committed various overt acts, including but not limited to the following, and it goes on and on and on. Now, keep in mind, when they went to that federal magistrate, he said that there were that the federal magistrate said they would not do charges against Lemon, Fort, and these two, Cruz and Lundy, and others. And so the interesting thing is, like, okay, so you're claiming all these people were here, but you couldn't get an indictment against the others, but you got an indictment against these four. So it goes to show you how this is going. But I think Matt is absolutely right. This is all about send the threat. It's all about terrorizing. It's all about saying, we're going to make you go through a living hell and put all of your stuff out there. And just like they did, James Comey and Tish James, even though those cases blew up in their faces.
This is a classic case of tyranny and terror, Roland. I think what we see here with the arrest of Ford and Lemon, this is a clear case of political retaliation. Let's speak candidly about this. This has no legal bearing, as we've heard from Matt and from Candace. And what we do see is that Black and brown journalists and independent journalists continue to be attacked under this administration. I woke up this morning not knowing if I was in the United States or North Korea. We are living under an authoritarian and totalitarian regime. We're seeing this happen again and again and again. We're seeing our government continually overreach to persecute and prosecute people who are simply doing their job. And my fear is that as we continue to move into this digital and physical authoritarian state, that there is no checks and balances from the other branches of governments. And that's the scary thing. I'm really happy to see that the magistrate judges pushed back initially, but we see that this government continues to find ways and go arounds to do what it wants. And so it's extremely important that that Black media, free media event that you have going on Monday, Roland, that's so important because this is only the beginning. They're making an example out of Ford. They're making an example out of Lemon. We could be next, quite frankly. And I think it's really critical for us to really think about what this means for the implications of free speech in this country.